The year was 1999. The Denver Broncos won their second consecutive Super Bowl, and American Movie won the Grand Jury Prize for Documentary Film at the Sundance Film Festival, both proving that even losers win from time to time. As the year drew to a close, Vladimir Putin would become the acting president of Russia following the resignation of Boris Yeltsin, and mankind held its breath in anticipation of computer software imploding the world over due to Y2K. And on December 25th, a mere 6 days before those events, a film was released in theaters about a young man's obsession turning to violence. But Jesse never saw it. Until now. This is Movies I Missed, 1999, Episode 10, The Talented Mr. Ripley.
I'm Jesse Munoz.
I'm Ryan Miller.
This is Movies I Missed, 1999, episode number 10. Today we're going to talk about The Talented Mr. Ripley, released December 25th, 1999, with a running time of 2 hours and 14 minutes.
I do want to give a warning. We will be discussing all aspects of this movie, so be advised that includes spoilers.
The Talented Mr. Ripley follows Tom Ripley, a young man sent to Italy to retrieve wealthy playboy Dickie Greenleaf. Once there, Tom becomes infatuated with Dickie's lavish lifestyle and befriends him and his girlfriend Marge. Tom's envy turns deadly as he murders Dick and assumes his identity. He manages to deceive those around him, including Marge and Dickie's friends, while covering his tracks.
It's Tom Ripley.
Tom Ripley?
We were at Princeton together.
Okay. Did we know each other?
Hello. Well, I knew you, so I suppose you must have known me.
Princeton's like a fog. America's like a fog. This is Marge Sherwood. Tom, sorry, what is it?
Ripley.
How do you do?
How do you do, Marge?
What are you doing in Manji?
Nothing. Nothing much. Just passing through.
Passing through?
Yeah.
You're so white. Do you ever see a guy so white, Marge? Gray, actually.
It's just an undercoat.
Say again?
You know, a primer.
That's fun. Margie likes that because she's so white.
Yes, I do, and you're not funny. Well, you should come and have lunch with us before you go. Yes, Dickie?
Sure, anytime.
Well, coincidence.
Ryan, this was my choice.
Yes, it was.
For our final movie that we're covering here for this season. It's one of those movies that I feel like, you know, I really like Matt Damon. I feel like I've seen a lot of his stuff, but always felt like a pretty big glaring omission. I feel like this movie has a lot of a weight to it. It feels like there's, I don't know, maybe it's because of who directed it, but yeah, I feel like there was prestige to this movie. What's your history with it?
This is the third time I've seen it. I don't really remember what I felt the first time around. I remember years ago now, before I stopped listening to all of Kevin Smith's podcasts, like years ago now, I remember there was an episode, he was like high and he was talking to Scott Mosier and he was talking about how he had rewatched The Talented Mr. Ripley and he was just like gushing about how good it was and saying it's like one of his favorite movies now that he's rewatched it. And I remember that made me give the movie another look. And maybe it was because of how much Kevin Smith was like building it up. But I remember the second time I watched it, the last time before now, watching it and being like, ho-hum about it. Like, so it's not like I disliked the movie, but my recollection, this is one of those movies where I feel like aside from some visuals, it's like after I watch it a year later, I've completely forgotten the entire plot. It's kind of complicated.
Sure.
So like, you know, I thought it was okay in the past.
Okay.
I guess.
All right. The only thing I really knew about it was the meme that came from it. Tommy.
Tommy.
Yeah.
That was the peeping.
That was all I knew from the movie. You know, I knew Matt Damon was in it. I knew Jude Law. Most of the cast, I feel like I knew were in the movie. I didn't know about the director, Anthony Minghella, who directed previously to this, The English Patient, which is a movie I also haven't seen, but was like I feel like it won every award that year. And the thing that I equate or associate the English Patient with
Seinfeld.
Yeah,
same here. I've never seen it.
Yeah.
And I just, from that episode of Seinfeld, I get the impression that it's kind of like it might be good, but it's like kind of a stuffy, hoity-toity, kind of Oscar baity kind of movie. But yeah, I've never seen that either.
So yeah, I've the only thing I know about the English Patient is that it's born from Seinfeld. I've never seen Cold Mountain.
Same.
I'm trying to think, is there anything from this guy that I've seen?
I mean, when I popped in the movie, again, I had the Blu-ray to give it another watch, and his name came up. It's like I was expecting it to be a recognizable name because I feel like this is a pretty like well-liked movie, like not necessarily a modern classic, but like, something of note. Mm-hmm. And when his name came up, I was like, who the hell is that?
Yeah.
I don't know who the hell this guy is. Like, I don't know if I've seen anything else he's done.
Okay, so here's his filmography, the stuff that he's directed. He's written some stuff and then directed some stuff. His first movie was in 1978. It's called A Little Like Drowning.
Nope. No
it's
clue.
It's a 55-minute feature from 1970, completed in 15 days. Probably most people haven't seen it.
Sounds like a student film or something, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. His next credit is something called Truly, Madly, Deeply. It's from 1990, so there's a pretty big gap there. And this
I feel like that name is familiar, but I also might be thinking of that like 90s one-hit wonder radio song that I think is called Truly, Madly, Deeply.
Savage Garden or something?
Yeah. That's the one.
This is a British fantasy drama film made for the BBC.
Yeah, I have to be thinking of the song because this
with Alan Rickman in it. So don't know that. 1993 is Mr. Wonderful, which
I don't know that.
Looks like it stars Matt Dillon, Mary Louise Parker, Vincent D'Onofrio. Didn't make any money. The budget of $13 million, box office of $3 million, and it's 52% on Rotten Tomatoes. So,
yeah, don't know it.
Then 1996 is The English Patient. That's I would consider his breakout. Cost anywhere between $27 and $43 million with a box office of $232 million. And it won all those Academy Awards. It won Picture, Director, Supporting Actress, Art Direction, Cinematography, Costume Design, Film Editing, Dramatic Score, Best Sound. And then it was also nominated for Best Actor for Ralph Fiennes, Best Actress, which those two didn't win, and Best Screenplay, which it didn't win. So it was I remember how big it was at the time when that came out. So then he does The English Patient, huge. What does he follow it up with? Talented Mr. Ripley. This is also another big movie. He does something called Heaven with Kate Blanchett and Giovanni Ribisi.
No clue.
Whoa, a romantic thriller, huh? Does Cold Mountain, which I think was a pretty big hit with.
I know the name.
Jude Law,
I know nothing else about that movie.
Nicole Kidman, Renee Zellweger. I think it did pretty well. 2006, he did Breaking and Entering, also with Jude Law, and that was his last picture before he died that he directed.
No idea what that movie is either.
And he died from a hemorrhage following an operation to remove cancer of tonsils and neck. So. Unfortunately, only lived up to 54. So I'm sure we would have maybe known his name a little bit better if he had continued on living.
Yeah. I mean, that entire filmography, I've heard of 3 of the movies and seen one of them. So
yeah. Did some producing, some stuff, but nothing that's like really big. Did a little bit of television, but again, nothing that you would probably know. But the two, I guess the 3 big ones would be The English Patient, this movie that we're going to talk about, Talented Mr. Ripley, and then Cold Mountain. English Patient had 12 nominations, Ripley had 5, and Cold Mountain had 7. So all 3 of them pretty big as far as like critically, pretty big deals. He was the director and writer of this. It was based off a 1955 novel of the same name by Patricia Highsmith, who went on to write, I think, a couple different novels.
There were 5 Tom Ripley novels all told.
Yeah, okay. And then The Talented Mr. Ripley has been adapted a couple different times. In the 60s, there was a movie called Purple Noon, which was a loose adaptation, I think, a French film that did it.
With Alain Delon, I think I read.
Yeah. And then there's a show that's out right now called Ripley.
Yeah, that came out this year, I believe.
Yeah, with Andrew Scott. And I've heard my friends have watched it and said it's really good. So I don't know, maybe check that out. But yeah, the movie was based off of those books or the
when I was
original book.
glancing at Wikipedia, I just wanted to see, like, get a look at the writer and the novel. That's when I found out that there were 4 sequels to it. And yeah, there's like apparently a bunch of different adaptations of the Ripley books over the years, and there were a couple of names that I was surprised to see also played the role. I aside from Alain Delon and Matt Damon, the only other one I remember, but like it feels like, how could this guy and Matt Damon play the same character? Is Dennis Hopper played him once, apparently.
Oh, really?
That's what Wikipedia said.
That's crazy.
A corduroy jacket in Italy.
Morning, Tom.
Morning.
Come join us.
Hey, I want this job of yours, Tommy. I was just saying, you live in Italy, you stay at Dickie's house, you eat Dickie's food, wears clothes, and his father picks up the tab. If you get bored, you let me know, because I'll do it. I'll do it.
Yeah, there were a couple of other recognizable names on there as well, but I now forget who they were.
Yeah, so Ripley's been around for a while, and it feels like I've totally missed out on it. And reading the Wikipedia plot for the book, it feels like the movie stayed like almost exact to what the book was. So that was really interesting.
Well, it is a period piece, which I think is cool about it.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, it would have been so easy. Like, if this came out, I was about to ask, what year did this come out? And then I'm like, oh, yeah, we're doing a fucking podcast about 1999. If this came out, like, a couple years later, like, if this came after the first Bourne movie with Matt Damon, they 100% would have modernized it.
Oh, yeah. I love the fact that it takes place when it takes place. It's like late 50s or something like that.
Yeah.
And, like, there's no phones, especially where they're at in Italy.
I mean, even the intercontinental travel is done by boat in the film.
Yeah, it's awesome. Just the look. The one thing that I've seen praised about this movie throughout the internet is the look of the movie.
Well, it's easy when you shoot in like Italy and places to make it look good.
It is, except I was reading while they were filming, it was like constantly raining.
Oh, really?
Like frequent and unpredictable rain hampered the production, saying we had to deliver this gorgeous Mediterranean world, this beautiful world of southern Italy, and we could never get Italy to turn beautiful. We would divide the scenes up and often go into words and go out and get 2 or 3 words, and then it would start to rain. We had to go back in again. So that's interesting, but it is, I mean, it's gorgeous. And of course, shooting in Italy, like you said, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it's like those things where like there's some gorgeous influencer who's like made a bunch of money or whatever, and people post the meme that says like step 1, be gorgeous.
Right.
It's like, yeah, it's an easy win when you set your film in like these beautiful vistas on like the seaside towns and all.
Sure. Shoot in Rome, step 1.
Yeah.
All right. So the movie stars Matt Damon as Tom Ripley. What's your relationship with Tom Ripley, with Matt Damon? I mean, he's been in everything since, the early 90s. We obviously have a little bit of a connection with his Kevin Smith stuff back in the early days, but he's gone on to become pretty prolific. What's your relationship with him?
I like Matt Damon in general. As recently as just like 2 or 3 years ago, he was the lead in The Last Duel, which was like my favorite movie that year, the Ridley Scott movie.
Yeah, that was really good.
But my overwhelming feeling, and I think it comes from like watching this, and, I have, a pretty extensive history with the early Kevin Smith stuff, and he's in, Dogma, which was the first Kevin Smith movie I ever saw. And just like last year, for the first time in a long time, I rewatched Rounders with him and Edward Norton when they were pretty young. And I feel like I like Matt Damon. I've always liked Matt Damon, but it's like the further you go back in his career, the more I like him. And I it's not because I think he's like bad now or anything, but it's just like a lot of the movies he's doing these days, I feel like are more on the generic big movie kind of side of things, where like, Rounders or, Kevin Smith's weird religious comedy, or Good Will Hunting early in his career.
Yeah.
Like, those are like the performances and the films that like are really interesting. And they're, especially stuff like Rounders and Good Will Hunting, like those are the kind of movies you can see Matt Damon in interviews talking about how movies like that are hard to get made anymore because everything needs to be an IP and like, you know, a guaranteed bankable property, and studios aren't giving money to like small projects or whatever. And I feel like that's where Matt Damon thrives the most. So I still like him, but it's like, I feel like I like more of his older movies than I do his more modern stuff, like Post-Born.
Did you like him in Oppenheimer?
See, like him in Oppenheimer, I feel like anybody could have played that role. I feel like Matt Damon brought nothing specifically to that role. I mean, that's a case where it's like that movie is so much Christopher Nolan's vision, and like almost nobody except for Cillian Murphy really feels like they were necessary to the success of that movie because whoever they got was just going to feel like a character, you know, in a Christopher Nolan movie.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, Matt Damon's fine in it, but I feel like many people could have played that role. That's kind of the thing, is like even Jason Bourne, like Matt Damon was not a necessity for Jason Bourne to be a good movie. Like you could have gotten someone who was like a better fighter, better at stunts. He was fine at that stuff for sure, the way they shot it and choreographed it and all. You know, he brings his charisma, but he's also playing a character that's like lost his memory, and he's not the most charismatic guy in the world.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's more of the modern stuff, like these bigger movies with more generic characters where like his character in this is completely unlikable, and to watch a movie where you like the main character even though he's such a piece of shit because of the quality of acting and the writing. Or going back and watching Rounders, I was fucking riveted by that movie, rewatching it. Like just him and Edward Norton when they were young and hungry and like fighting for these roles where they could like really show off with one another. It's just, I think that was the best era of his career, like pre-Jason Bourne, personally. And I still like him, like I said. But.
Yeah, I think you make a really strong argument. I love Good Will Hunting. One of my favorite movies. I think that movie is
amazing.
Excellent, and he is so good in it. Rounders, again, I feel the exact same way as you. So it's kind of surprising that I haven't seen The Talented Mr. Ripley, because I've liked all that stuff. Even like the scene that he has in Good Will Hunting, like he's barely in Good Will Hunting, but he like comes in and is just an awesome part of that movie. It's already an awesome movie.
Wait, what?
Did I say
Good Will Hunting?
I'm sorry, Saving Private Ryan.
Okay. I was going to say
he's the lead of
he's
Good
Will
Will
Hunting.
No, I meant Saving Private Ryan. The small part that he has, like basically just the one scene.
Totally, for
and
sure.
Saving Private Ryan is so awesome because, you know, like the whole movie's based off of his character, trying to find his character. So when you get to him, is it worth saving him? And it's almost, and the you know, like the little monologues that he has are so good. He's just so good in that. I loved him in the Ocean movies. I love Ocean's 11. I really love Ocean's 12 and 13. I think they're all great. And I really liked his character in those movies, especially with like Brad Pitt and George Clooney. I was never really into the Bourne movies. Like I just never really get into like the I liked the idea, but I just never really loved those movies. So they weren't really there for me. The Departed, I really loved him in because I feel like that
Departed's good.
The first time I saw him as kind of a villain, because he's always been playing the hero.
Well,
except for this,
until
which I
seeing this,
right, which I hadn't seen yet.
Seen.
Yeah, so it was the first for me to see like him play a villain, and then he just does stuff like I remember him in True Grit, in a small role in True Grit that I really liked. Elysium is a movie I wish I liked more than I did.
It's just a shame sandwiched between two great movies from Neil Blomkamp that one it felt like there was like studio interference or something, and it wasn't as great as it could have been. Mm-hmm. Like I would love to see him in the better version of that movie, and it's okay, you know,
it's okay, but it's not great.
Yeah,
I loved The Martian. I thought The Martian was great, and I really liked him in that.
Yeah, The Martian's really good. That's a good one.
And then after that, it feels like the last duel. See, here's my problem with the argument is I feel like every time I mention him in one of these movies, like, sure, it's not the same as some of that like hungry, early, young stuff, but he was so good in The Last Duel. That movie is awesome.
Yeah, The Last Duel was great.
A couple of years ago. And I get what you're saying with like Oppenheimer, like,
But like, also look at The Last Duel. When has he ever played a character like that before?
Sure.
Like that felt like him trying something, stepping out on a ledge. And he and Ben Affleck co-wrote that movie with somebody else as well. So it's like he wrote that for himself. Like it feels like that was a movie that he really put his heart and soul into. Which is part of the reason I think that it ended up being so good, because as you know, I'm not like classically a huge Ridley Scott fanboy. Mm-hmm. And The Martian was really good. That's another one though, where it's just like, what great source material. Like that, like people have loved that book since like it came out, and you know, he was good to fill that role for sure, just because he's like likable. But there's so many things like, I don't know, like, do you remember that movie, The Informant, that he was in? Yeah. Like, I saw that in the theater. I remember liking it. I just don't remember much about it. Like, it doesn't really stick in my mind. I just feel like he's reliably good, but I feel like the like great Matt Damon performances, like the standout ones, are a little more few and far between these days. And I think it does come from that hunger thing.
You're asking the guy to hit home runs every time. I feel like the guy's constantly bringing it no matter what. Like, I feel like his like Grand Slam stuff was definitely in the late 90s, early 2000s. And you could argue whether or not the Bourne stuff would be considered home runs. I mean, they were huge hits.
Yeah, I mean, you can't deny their popularity. I've just never been personally the biggest fan.
Sure. But the Ocean stuff, and I mean,
I'm also not a huge fan of the Ocean's movies, though.
Sure. But like, he's just constantly producing stuff. Like, it just feels like no matter what, even if it's not as good as Rounders or as good as Good Will Hunting or even Talented Mr. Ripley, it feels like he's still attempting to. He's not playing it safe.
He's taking shots, because like there's also that movie, The Great Wall, that he did because he wanted to work with that director. That movie is fucking awful. Right. But like he did it because he had a good reason aside from just this is a paycheck.
Right.
So like I give him props for that. And like I said, I still like him. It's just if I were to look back, I feel like I like more of his stuff early on than I do now. Like, not to say that he's ever bad, but just, I like Matt Damon.
This movie's cast is phenomenal, though. You got Matt Damon, who we just discussed for Elling. You got Gwyneth Paltrow, who we could talk about for a little bit. Jude Law, you know, this is kind of his first real big breakout.
Oh, is it? I didn't even know that.
Kate Blanchett, Philip Seymour Hoffman, who every time we watch a movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman, I feel like I'm just like, I lose it for that dude. We got James Reborn, who's one of those guys, actors that is like in everything. Mm-hmm. We got Jack Davenport in here, who is like, man, I know this guy from somewhere. I got to figure out where it was. And it was the Pirates movies. He's got that
recognizably snooty British face.
Yes. And he played a very different character than the character he plays. They're both snooty, but a different, like a good version. Like in the Pirates, he's more of a villain until he isn't.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to make any sense, but like this just popped into my head. I feel like normally he's Hugh Grant, but in this he was kind of channeling Billy Zane.
I kind of see that.
Like he's normally just like standard British dude, but in this he's like kind of like the sexier, more exotic guy. And
yeah. And then you got the library cop from Seinfeld again, back from Magnolia. Philip Baker Hall. Yeah, in a little part here. But I mean, just the main cast, Damon, Paltrow, Law, and then I guess Blanchett and Hoffman would be like the supporting.
Yeah, I mean, again, parts. Philip Seymour Hoffman, he's in like 3 scenes in the whole movie.
Tommy. Man, he's so, when he's on scene though, man, he's just spectacular. I just really miss that dude.
Tommy, how's the peeping? Tommy, how's the peeping? Tommy.
What about Jude Law? So Jude Law, I feel like, has had a career where, unlike Matt Damon, I don't think I've seen a ton of stuff with Jude Law in it.
I like Jude Law in general. I probably haven't seen a ton of his filmography as well, but like one of my favorites from him is the David Cronenberg movie Existenz, which is not one of David Cronenberg's like most beloved, like popularly discussed films, but I like it a lot. It's about like a futuristic video game console that you like, it's like a living organic thing and you hook it into yourself, and the whole movie's about like, it's kind of like The Matrix. It's like what's real and what's not once you've hooked into the game. It's like The Matrix, it's like Inception a little bit.
Also came out in 99.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and then there's like a kind of later movie that I feel like nobody really remembers is The Repo Men, which is like a science fiction action movie with him and Forrest Whitaker, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That if you've never seen it, has some incredible ultra violence, especially like the final action scene with Jude Law and some knives in a hallway.
Okay.
It's not like the most amazing movie ever, but I like it. Yeah, I don't know. There's stuff here and there throughout his career. He's one of these actors where I look at him and I'm like, how has he not been a superhero yet? But maybe he just doesn't want to do that.
He was in Captain Marvel.
Oh, that's right. He was the villain.
Yeah, Jan Rog, I think is what
I forgot about that. There you go. He is a superhero.
Yeah. He was in
Is everybody in this movie in a Marvel film? Because Matt Damon has that little cameo in Thor.
Yeah.
Philip Seymour Hoffman, I guess, isn't.
well, he didn't have a chance to be, but Kate Blanchett, Jude Law, yeah. Yeah, I mean, just looking at his stuff, he was in Sherlock Holmes. I liked him in that. I've only seen that first one.
Don't love those movies.
I thought he was okay in that first one. It looks like he's in a couple of Wes Anderson movies, Grand Budapest Hotel.
I mean, who isn't in that movie, though? Like,
That's true. That's true. Some other stuff. The Fantastic Beast movies. He's Dumbledore in those. I haven't seen those.
Yeah,
As much of a fan of Harry
care.
Potter. I haven't seen those movies. And then he's just like in things that I Heart Huckabees. There's the other Wes Anderson. Road to Perdition. I haven't seen.
I Heart Huckabees is not Wes Anderson.
Oh, it's David Russell. Yeah, you're right. AI. He was in AI. I haven't seen that. Road to Perdition.
Oh, you've never seen AI?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I like that movie a lot. Like as opposed to popular opinion, but yeah, he's good. He's like the sex robot.
Oh, is he? That makes sense.
He's like a robot that's designed to be like basically a male prostitute. He can like change his hair and his eye color to like suit the woman's desires, and like he plays music out of his body to like seduce them, and he's like a pleasure bot.
That's hilarious. That makes sense. I mean, just look at him. Hugo, he was in that. Aviator, so he worked with Scorsese a couple of times. Yeah, he's one of those guys that I like. I just haven't seen a lot of stuff that he's been in.
I mean, I've seen like pretty much everything you just mentioned, but yeah, I don't know.
He's never the lead though, right? Like it doesn't feel like any of these movies he's the star of the movie.
Well, it's funny. The two movies that I mentioned that like nobody else would probably mention, The Repo Men and Existence, he is the lead. Like
Sure.
Maybe that's why those are the movies I think of with him.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean everything. I mean, if you just go through, I don't think he's the star of those Fantastic Beasts movies. I think it's
it's what's his name from Les Mis, and he played
Eddie Redmayne.
Yeah. What's the name? I'm trying to think of the scientist in the wheelchair.
Stephen Hawking. Yeah.
Yeah, in The Theory of Everything or whatever it's called.
Yeah, it's just weird to me that he's not the bigger
and
star.
The villain in Jupiter Ascending with Channing Tatum and
jeez.
Mila Kunis.
You just think coming off of this that he's got the look, he's got the feel, but for some reason he's just not the leading man in a lot of these movies. It's kind of strange. Gwyneth Paltrow's been in a million things. The 90s was like her peak.
I mean, she's great in these kind of roles.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, she's a good dramatic actress. She's perfectly likable in the Marvel movies, but I feel like you can kind of tell her heart's not in it. But like,
yeah, for sure.
Having a role where she gets to like go the full gamut of like, you know, joy and sadness, and she gets to cry and scream. Like, I feel like she is good in this kind of stuff.
No, she's really good in this movie too. And then Cate Blanchett, I feel like, the first thing that I ever saw her in was Lord of the Rings. But she's, stage actor who, Jude Law, again, also done a ton of stage stuff. If you look at his Wikipedia page, it's a ton of stage stuff. So, but with Cate Blanchett, she's her breakout was probably Lord of the Rings, which is just a couple of years after this. Because you look at some of the other stuff, Pushing 10, I don't think that was a big, something called Bangers as a short film. Elizabeth, in 1998, might have been a big role for her. But Lord of the Rings.
Wasn't Pushing 10 like a famous flop?
Was it? It looks,
I feel like it was
really, really bad. John Cusack, Billy Bob Thornton, Angelina Jolie. Oh, yeah. The Gift. Don't know what that is.
Oh, The Gift is a good movie. Sam Raimi.
Written by Billy Bob Thornton. That's interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good like dark horse movie that I would highly recommend.
Yeah. But she's Cate Blanchett now. She's been in a million things and she's awesome. Did you see Tar?
No, I haven't.
Oh man, that was really good. Just from a couple years ago.
Yeah.
She was really, really good in that. All right, let's talk about the movie. So Matt Damon plays Tom Ripley, who's this, I don't even know, is he a con man to start out with, or is he just trying to fit in? Like, I don't know if I can explain his role.
It feels like this movie is the origin of him as a con man. Like, I never get the impression that he's like living the life of a con man until he gets this job and goes to Italy.
Yeah.
But I mean, we know so little about him. All we know is that he's friends with someone who went to Princeton and he can play the piano, so he borrows their jacket.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I get the impression watching the movie that but I mean, then he does have a talent already for mimicking people and for forging signatures. He says that right up front, but there's like no backstory of him. So I don't know. I'd be curious to know if like in the book or any of the subsequent books, they go into it more. But I thought it was a funny description when I was just like glancing over the Wikipedia page for the books. That Tom Ripley is described as a con man and serial killer.
I mean,
because
he
does murder a fair number of people in this. And if he got out of this situation and went on to star in 4 more books, you probably assume that his body count gets pretty big by the end.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know. Honestly, I had no idea what the movie really was about. I didn't know he'd murder anyone. I didn't know. I thought it was something to do with him taking someone's place, but I didn't know it'd be like he'd end up murdering him the way he did.
Signor Ripley ha sviluppato tendenze omosessuali.
Are you a homosexual? Interesting non sequitur.
No.
No. By the way, officially, there are no Italian homosexuals. Makes Michelangelo and Leonardo very inconvenient.
Huh?
Tell him I have a fiancé, and Dickie has a fiancé, and that Freddie Miles probably had a string of them.
Il signor Ripley ha una fidanzata, il signor Dickie ha una fidanzata, e probabilmente il signor Freddie Miles ha molte fidanzate.
Mamma mia, quante fidanzate!
What did he say?
He says so many fiancés.
The way the movie presents it is the murder seems like accidental. Like he doesn't seem to intend to try to kill Dickie. And in the books, it sounds like he planned on killing Dickie and taking his place.
Really?
So I feel like there's a little bit of a difference there. With this one, and I don't know if the book plays into this at all, but it feels like there's also some homoerotic stuff going on. Obviously,
100% there is. I mean, the movie, by the end, there's like no doubting that.
Well, obviously in the end, because he hooks up with Jack Davenport.
Peter.
Yeah. There's these like strange scenes where he's like wants to get into the tub with him, or even after he kills him and they're on the boat. It's so creepy. And he's just like spooning him. Oh yeah. It's so wacky.
Which is funny, like you wouldn't necessarily watch this movie and think like, oh, he's a serial killer. But when you see stuff like that brings to mind like Ted Bundy and shit to me, where he'd bury the remains of one of his victims and then go back later, put makeup on it and just like lay with it and stuff. Like
right. So the con man stuff, it doesn't actually feel like it feels okay. So it feels like he wants a life that he doesn't have, right? Like, so he's going to try to lie his way into that, to getting what he wants. And in doing so, becomes infatuated with Dickie. Not only is attracted to him, but kind of just wants to be him.
Yeah. Women want him, men want to be him, just like Austin Powers.
Exactly. Yeah. Jude Law does have a very Austin Powers-esque feel to him in this movie. He's so handsome. He does such a good job with his accent, as I thought, oh man, he's going to be super, super British, but sounded totally American. So that was pretty cool. And is just so likable. Like you can understand Matt Damon falling in love with him a little bit because he is just so charismatic. And they talk about that throughout the movie. Like, Gwyneth Paltrow talks about how, like, when you're with him or when you're around him,
when you're the focus of his attention, it makes you feel like the sun is shining on you or whatever.
Yeah.
But one thing that I do like as well is that Dickie's not like this perfect person. Mm-hmm. He is kind of a dick and he's wishy-washy and, so it's like Matt Damon's character does have this infatuation with him, but it's like you'd never think like you need to kill this person. But when it happens, like from Tom's point of view, you can kind of understand it.
Sure. I mean, in the it's obviously an act of passion and perseverance. I feel like when they're on that boat because, Dickie takes him out alone on this boat and then pushes him away and tries to get away, and it didn't deserve an oar to the face that split open his face the way it did, but it feels like up until that point Matt Damon, while creepy and dishonest, isn't a murderous
malevolent
killer. It feels like he's a part, almost in the same way that Gwyneth Paltrow is a part of it, right? Like,
I mean, I'll be honest, like in the early part of the movie, pre-murder, man, there's so many scenes that I don't want to say vibed with, but like I felt in my core, like as just, I've never been like the social butterfly, like most outgoing person in the world. I've never been like our mutual friend, Andre, who he can just like any person he meets on the street, he can have a conversation with them as though he's known them his whole life and he's completely comfortable doing it. Mm-hmm. Like, that's not me, man. I mean, one of the scenes that really hit kind of close to home, just in not any big important way, but like experiences I've had in the past, is when when Tom is out with Dickie and Dickie suddenly mentions that, is it Freddie, Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, is going to show up, and you can just see it in Tom's face. He's like, Freddie, who's Freddie? And he immediately doesn't like the idea of having to share the friend. Yeah. And like they have these plans. They have this whole day planned out that Tom's looking forward to. And then as soon as Freddie shows up, Freddie's just another super charismatic guy, like on the same level as Dickie. And suddenly Tom is the third wheel. And like that scene in the record shop where they're like, Dickie's trying to be nice about it, but basically like breaking off his plans with Tom, and he's telling him, oh, you can come if you want, but you can tell that he doesn't want him to.
Right.
And like that stuff, Matt Damon is great in those scenes because you can just, with facial expressions and body language, you can feel the rejection and the disappointment and the disdain for Freddie.
Yes.
And God, Freddie and Tom, Philip Seymour Hoffman and Matt Damon, the two of them, they are just like oil and water in this movie. Like they're only together a couple times, but
so good.
It's like the negative chemistry the two of them have is incredible.
It is riveting. And after Dickie's dead, and this is pretty late into the movie, right before Tom kills Freddie, that whole scene in the apartment is just chef's kiss. It's just so good, man.
It's so interesting. Like, again, it really goes to show how good Matt Damon is in this particular movie, that Tom is like this character who's pretty on top of everything, but you can tell that he's still new to all this, because as soon as there's a tiny wrench in the gear, everything starts to unravel.
Yeah.
And like, all it takes is Freddie shows up at the apartment and starts asking questions, and suddenly he doesn't have answers for anything, and he's trying to make shit up on the fly, and it's just like Freddie's fucking around with this thing that Tom bought that's important to him, but he's trying to play it off as like it's not his, but he can't help himself, and he's like trying to protect it from Freddie, and Matt Damon is amazing in this.
He really is. He does stuff that I didn't know he had the talent to do. Like when he first meets up with Dickie and does the impression of his father.
Yeah.
It was so good. Like his voice, his cadence, the way he did it. And James Reborn, kind of put it on a little bit as his character, because that's kind of who his character was anyways. It worked.
Yeah, he's very much, he's like the Ivy League dad, kind of.
He speaks kind of like this, kind of slow. Yeah. And then, I mean, but even like a little bit like Gwyneth Paltrow and imitating what Jude Law is doing, I felt like I didn't know he had this in him. And he's got this like creepy smile throughout this movie, like this big grinning teethy smile that normally I feel like is kind of charming, but in this there's something a little bit more sinister to it. And it does it so well. It's just, man, the acting in this movie is really phenomenal.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame, like, since you're seeing the like formation of this con man, serial killer, whatever, and knowing that there are more books, it's kind of a shame that, I mean, on one hand, this movie is perfectly fine as a standalone and doesn't need a sequel, but there's a part of me that would have been curious to see, like 2-3 years later, a sequel to this, to see how Tom would progress and grow his skills more, and just to see Matt Damon like reprise this role with a new group of characters would have been really interesting. But there is a part of me that's like, yeah, no, we're probably better off.
I think I'm good with the one. I think it works well. Not to say that it wouldn't be good, but I feel like there's so many sequels of everything now. It's almost like better.
It's less of a desire to see a sequel and more of a desire to just see how Matt Damon would have continued the progression of the character.
The evolution. Yeah, for sure.
Because even by the end of this movie, you know, it's like he's not completely cold-hearted. He obviously has some kind of personality disorder, and like I don't know, he is in a tough situation because he's on the boat, and Cate Blanchett's character is there, and she knows Jack Davenport's character, and like Jack Davenport and Cate Blanchett both think that Matt Damon's character is a different person, so it makes it tough in confined quarters. Like, it doesn't feel like he has to kill Jack, but it's like he just keeps having to kill people based on circumstance. It never feels like he plans to do it. And I just would find it interesting if we could have followed him even further and gotten to the point where he doesn't cry every time he kills someone anymore, you know? Like,
it was a crazy serial killer for sure. He gets caught though, right? Like, there's no way out of this, right? Like, there's no way out of the murder of Jack.
I mean, there's multiple points in the movie where I feel like there's no way out, and sometimes by coincidence he gets out of a situation, but I mean, he must have thought there was a way out of it if he was going to bother to kill Jack.
It felt like he just gave up at that point. I felt
wait until after dark and just take him out and throw him overboard, and then he's disappeared. No one knows where he is.
That's very, very
I mean,
suspect,
he could probably make up a story. He could forge a suicide letter. He did it before with Dickie. I mean,
yeah. I think one of the most interesting scenes to me was the Philip Baker Hall scene, because it comes after he sort of lost it with Marge, Gwyneth Paltrow, and almost kills her, right? And so he's kind of resigned to, I'm caught.
When I said a minute ago that it's sometimes convenient, I was thinking specifically of this scene.
Yeah. I love this scene because you go, oh, he's done. You know, Philip Baker Hall is going to come and arrest him. She's told them everything, and here we go.
Just the way Philip Baker Hall is played, you assume that like he knows he's
over. Yep.
He's a pro at this.
Then it totally flips, and you find this other story out about, you know, Dickie and his past, and
that's the only reason I say that it's convenient, is because all of a sudden, out of the blue, they could have told us anything. They could have been like, Dickie killed 7 people in a house fire, or Dickie ran over somebody's dog with his car. Like, they could have told us anything. So the fact that they just come out of the blue with, oh, Dickie almost killed this guy that he beat the shit out of, like, it saves Tom's ass.
Yeah.
So it feels a little convenient, but it's not like egregious.
I just loved it because I wasn't expecting it, right? It took my expectations and turned it in a way that I didn't think was happening. I thought, gig's up, this is over, we're getting to the end of the movie, he's going to jail, and then it doesn't happen. And so, yeah, it's a little convenient, but I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah, so I said in the beginning that my only real recollection about the last time I watched this movie, which was some years ago, because as you know, I haven't listened to Kevin Smith's podcast in a very long time.
Yep.
Was that I was kind of ho-hum on it. I'll say that, like, as I was watching it this time, I was like, I don't know what I disliked about it before because I was really enjoying it. And then like I was ready to be like, oh, this is like a 5-star movie. And I still think that it's very good. Did you have this feeling at all, though? It's like...
Should have ended sooner?
It feels like it goes on and on and on at the end. Like it feels like we're about to hit a climax, and then it's like they dangle the ending in front of us a little more, and it feels like he's going to get caught, but no, then he gets away. But then this person shows up, and then he gets away, and then the bookman from Seinfeld shows up, and you're like, oh, he's definitely cooked. And then it turns out there's this convenient thing, and he gets away, and then he's on the boat at the end, and it's like finally he's scot free, and then here comes fucking Kate Blanchett happens to be on this boat. And now he's got to kill his boyfriend. And it's like, it just keeps going and going. And as much as I was enjoying it and like the performances and all were still good, it did feel like it had a few too many endings for me.
I would have ended it after Gwyneth Paltrow slaps him, is like, I know you did it. I know you did it. And he gets away with it. I think end credits, boom. Then you cut off like maybe 25 minutes of the movie still, right? And the ending, I don't know if it adds anything other than this dude's legit crazy. Like he is, after killing 2 people, he kills the third one. And it's like, oh, all right, he is. Yeah, I don't know if it adds a lot after. And maybe you could just cut Kate Blanchett out of the movie. It feels like they wanted him to get caught, right? But they didn't actually want to commit to him. I mean, it does
feel like she's there just so that ending could happen. I mean, she is important to other parts of the movie as well, but like it doesn't feel like we needed a denouement with her character necessarily. Like she served her purpose just fine. We didn't need her to show up again.
Yeah, with all the stuff that happened at the opera and afterwards with her meeting up with Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah, like he broke it off with her as Dickie. So it's like it could have just... That could have been it.
It is crazy how often they ran into each other at convenient times. That feels more convenient than even the ending with Philip Baker Hall. Yeah, I agree. Cut it after they get on the Gwyneth Paltrow and James Reborn get on the boat to leave, and he gets away with it. Her saying, "I know you did it," and he wins, and I think you accomplished the same thing. I feel like so. Yeah.
They get on the boat, they pull off, Matt Damon puts on sunglasses, turns around, walks away, camera pulls back, the opening theme song from CSI plays, done.
There we go. We just made Talented Miss Ripley a 6-star movie. Yeah. Oh, man. Just really good, though. Like, performance-wise, every time Jude Law is on screen, I'm like falling in love with him. And like, even I don't love jazz, but like him taking Matt Damon to go play jazz and brings him on stage and all that stuff. It's like, you understand how someone would want to be around this person, right? Like
the movie ended likable. And you went on Spotify and listened to a couple Dizzy Gillespie tunes and got it out of your system.
Yeah. And I blindfolded myself to see if I could remember who they were. Yeah. So everyone star shines pretty bright in this movie.
What we need, if this current Ripley show that you said is on, if that's successful, what we need is the young Tom Ripley show where it's like him as a kid learning to be a con man.
Do we need that?
Just like young Sheldon.
Yeah, great. Full of great ideas tonight, Ryan. Love it. All right, let's talk a little bit about
We need the Tom Ripley extended universe.
Sure. It was like one and done. It's like there's something beautiful about just being one and done, and then they got to keep going back to it. And again, maybe the show is really good. Oh, before we get to the box office, I want to mention the credits. The opening credits, I want to say lasted over 8 minutes. And
it was like the opening credits were a montage.
It was crazy how long those credits were, and I really loved the style. I was wondering like what they were doing at first. But the whole movie feels like an homage to jazz. There's so many like jazz sort of things built into the movie besides the fact that they do play jazz. But like those opening credits, the way that they were stylized with like the different colors, the
colored
and stuff,
boxes.
Yeah, it felt very like a jazz cover. But yeah, it was super long. I actually stopped to look to see like, oh my gosh, the credits are still going like 8 minutes in. It was pretty crazy. But clever.
Well, what's weirder, the credits taking 8 minutes to happen in this movie, or the title of the movie not coming up until like 25 minutes in The Departed?
Oh man, I don't know. I love them both. They're both great. All right, box office. The budget of the movie was $40 million, so it feels like they got their money's worth just by filming in Italy for sure.
I mean, a lot of that had to have been location shooting.
Mm-hmm. The domestic box office was 81, and it had a worldwide turn of $138 million. So definitely made its money back. It opened wide December 25th in 2,300 theaters, grossing $12 million in second place behind Any Given Sunday, which also opened.
Oh my God.
We don't know which one's better, Any Given Sunday or Talented Mr. Ripley, but Any Given Sunday, bigger hit.
Any Given Sunday is fucking terrible.
It's so bad. Not just like a bad sports movie. It's just one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
It's just one of the most grating film watching experiences, just from like an audio visual standpoint. Ugh.
So
like
bad.
whoever edited that movie needs to be banned from Hollywood.
It's so bad. In its second week, it saw a 2% drop, grossing another $12 million, which is insane.
2%?
Yeah. It went like
unheard of.
12. It went like 12.7 to like 12.2 or something like that. It was in third place behind Stuart Little in its third week, which I feel like we've mentioned on the show multiple times, and Toy Story 2 in its
Well, it feels like we're
week.
watching a bunch of movies that were like contending for the Oscars right at the end of the year.
Yeah. And then Stuart Little and Toy Story 2 are just dominating the box office. I mean, Toy Story 2 in its seventh week was number 2, which is pretty funny. It stayed wide in theaters until early February and then left theaters the second week of April. So I had a good little run there. As far as reviews go, it's got 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I actually found quite a few negative reviews from some big names, but
really,
yeah, it was a little surprising. Our boy Roger Ebert, though, really liked it. Gave it a 4 out of 4. Said the movie is an intelligent a thriller as you'll see this year. It is also insidious in the way it leads us to identify with Tom Ripley, which is so spot on, right?
I mean, that's basically what I was saying. Like,
yeah,
I have experienced the same feelings as him. I've just never murdered anybody over them
that we know of,
as far as you know.
Yeah. Wow. But yeah, I mean, the fact that the lead character is also the villain of the movie is interesting, and it makes it in a way where it's
like
not
proto Dexter.
Totally, very, very. It feels like Dexter owes a lot to this movie for sure.
Yeah, that just popped into my head, but you're right.
What are you going to do now, Tom?
I don't know. Peter has a concert in Athens next month, so he asked me to come along and help out. He says goodbye. Oh, by the way, he was in rehearsals, so he couldn't...
Why do I think there's never been a Ripley rainy day?
What?
I know it was you. I know it was you.
Marge.
I know it was you.
Marge!
Please. No, you killed Vicky. I know. I know it was you.
Marge, please. It's not Tom. Really.
Lisa Schwarzbaum of Entertainment Weekly said, the talented Mr. Ripley slithers along with great elegance and purpose for most of Ripley's reign, stumbling only at the end when Minghella trips on the limitations imposed by his own updated psychoanalysis A-.
I wonder what specifically she's referring to.
I'm guessing the boat trip at the end with all the other stuff where it just feels like, you know, at the end, he kind of gives up in this weird way. The conversation that he has with Jack is even like, how can I keep doing this? Right? Like, I'm going to end up alone in this cabin. And then it shows him at the end alone in the cabin where it's.
It actually, you also see that image at the beginning of the movie. Like, it opens with that, like, look through the door, because the movie ends with the door closing on him just staring.
Right. I'm guessing that's what she's saying, but I mean, she's along the same lines. Good movie. Jonathan Rosenbaum of the Chicago Reader says, familiarity is the watchword of this overblown opus, which neglects holes in the plot to play up its postmortem theme of identity as pastiche, a clear case of the pot calling the kettle black. Jonathan Rosenbaum.
Boy, that guy.
Who's shot in your cereal, man?
That guy likes two things, metaphors and his dictionary.
It's a little, come on, man. It's hard for me to understand even what he's coming from, because, like, what plot holes neglecting here?
I mean, My only assumption is that he is assuming that some of the convenient ways that Tom is able to get out of things and like the convenient timing of things.
Sure.
Even like, it's just Kate Blanchett just keeps popping up in places. Like, she always is in the right place at the wrong time to fuck up whatever Tom's got going on.
Sure.
Like, I could view that as a plot hole, I suppose.
Sure.
Or even like, you know, Gwyneth Paltrow's character, like all the women in the movie, like she just shows up at the opera while he's there pretending to be somebody else with a different woman.
Yeah.
And he's pulling a fucking Clark Kent, just like putting his glasses on and off depending on who he's talking to be different people.
Circle they run in though, right? Like the rich debonair people are running at the opera. There was a scene where they did talk about him being Jude Law being Superman and Clark Kent.
That's true. He says he looks like Clark Kent.
And I was like, damn, how come Jude Law didn't play Superman? Because he does have a good look for it, I think. That would have been good. Charles Taylor of Salon.com says,
I'll tell you why, because he's not Bryan Singer's type.
Oh my God.
I mean, that's the only Superman movie that exists that he would have been like primed for.
Oh boy. Gonna move right on to James Taylor of Salon.com saying Minghella isn't going back to the modest style and the organic emotion of Truly Madly Deeply, his first and still his best film. You know, Salon.com, I'm not familiar with Salon.com, but they were obviously a website back in the 90s. I feel like they've shit on every movie that we've done for the show. And I just don't get it. Like, not every movie we've done for the show has been a masterpiece, but this is a good movie. And it feels like, I don't know what they want. I don't even know. What is Salon.com?
I have no clue what Salon.com is, but my only assumption is it's the digital version of like the women's magazines that ladies in old movies from like the 1960s when like they would go into the beauty salon and they'd sit there with that big like dome thing on their heads, drying their hair or whatever, like what they're reading. That's what I assume Salon.com is, the digital version of that magazine.
I guess so. Is it?
I have no clue.
About Salon, who we are. Salon helps you make sense of a contradictory world, leading the evolving, challenging dialogue on building a more democratic, innovative, and humane future. Salon has been a trusted destination.
Was that description written by Jonathan Rosenbaum of the Chicago Reader? I mean, it made about as little sense as his mini review did.
Salon has been a trusted destination for progressive journalism since 1995. We report on who's being left behind and who's getting ahead. We give current events context, provide rigorous analysis, and lead in-depth conversations. We gauge and challenge our readers, dismantling conventional wisdom and celebrating innovation with humanity. Yet they hated 1999 movies, man. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. All right. And then final review, we got Stella Papamichael, great name, of the BBC.com, said...
Papamichael.
It's a great name. Great name. In a starry lineup, it's Jude Law who commands most presence, playing the charmer so well that his absence in the later half leaves a gaping void. Ouch. 3 out of 5 stars.
He does. I mean, he's in the movie a lot, but then, yeah, it's a good half the movie after he's dead.
Because I knew that he won the Best Supporting Actor or was nominated for the Best Supporting Actor. And I'm watching the movie and I'm like, why is he the supporting actor? He's like in just as much as Matt Damon. Then obviously he dies and the movie
Maybe
changes.
that's part of the reason that it also feels kind of long in the tooth in the back end to me as well, because Jude Law feels like such a big part of the movie. And even after he's dead, people are constantly talking about him, but he dies like halfway through the film.
Yeah, he's in it for
and the rest of the movie is like fallout from that, but it just feels like it probably should have wrapped up sooner.
Yeah.
Or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. It is long in its tooth a little bit, but I enjoyed. I think for the most part, it uses.
I still think it's good. That would be like my one critique. It's the one thing that, like I said, I had the experience in real time of watching it and thinking like, man, what was my problem with this? And then in like the last 30 minutes or so, I was like, oh, okay, I do like this, but let's speed it up here.
Yeah, for sure. Nominated for 5 Academy Awards. Best Supporting Actor for Jude Law, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Score, Best Art Direction, and Best Costume Design. Doesn't look like it won any of them, though. And then nominated for 5 Golden Globes as well. Best Picture, Drama, Best Actor, motion picture drama for Matt Damon. Best supporting actor, motion picture, Jude Law. Best director, best original score, but also didn't win any of those awards. So a bunch of nominations for those, but no wins. Jude Law, though, was nominated a bunch. Nominated for an Oscar, a BAFTA, an Empire Award, a Golden Globe, Satellite Awards, and Teen Choice Award. So definitely a big breakout for Jude Law.
Teen Choice Award? Like this was a teen movie? I know it's got young, attractive people in it, but...
That's all it takes, man. That's all it takes. As far as cultural impact, coming off of Good Will Hunting in 1997, Saving Private Ryan and Rounders, and also 1999, Matt Damon begins his ascent in Hollywood as a leading man. This is kind of where, coming off of Good Will Hunting is just sort of like this mediocre rise for Matt Damon and Ben Affleck as well. But
I think you meant meteoric rise, not mediocre rise.
Did I say mediocre?
Well, mediocre rise.
Yeah. Some of those movies are a little, we talk a little bit about stuff like, man, I don't know.
What a year. Saving Private Ryan, Rounders, and this all in the same year for Matt Damon. Holy cow.
I mean, just look at this 90s. So he does 97 as he's in Chasing Amy, barely. That's not really. He's in The Rainmaker, which is a Francis Ford Coppola
That's
movie.
A pretty good movie.
Yeah, he's 97. He's got Rainmaker, Good Will Hunting, follows it up with Saving Private Ryan, Rounders, Dogma, Talented Mr. Ripley. That's like 3 years of just like fire, right? Like just going and going and going. He does a voice role for Titan AE I'd never seen. And then the Legend of Bagger Vance, which I also haven't seen, with Will Smith. That's a Robert Redford movie. He's in a cameo in Finding Forrester. I didn't know he was in that movie. All the Pretty Horses, directed by Billy Bob Thornton. Don't know about that one.
Well, we're learning tonight that he's a writer and a director.
Yeah.
As well as an actor.
Then he does Ocean's 11 and then the next year, The Bourne Identity. So, yeah.
That's where the mediocre rise of Matt Damon begins.
Oh, boy. And then Jude Law being introduced to a wider audience. This movie helped launch his career. Because, again, he's coming off of stuff. Like in 97, he was in Gattaca. I don't think that was a very big hit. But he was
Gattaca is awesome, though. I love Gattaca. Have you seen Gattaca?
I haven't.
Oh, Gattaca is so good.
He was in that Existence movie, but I know people didn't
Existence, please.
Oh, sorry. I know one saw that, I imagine. And then it's
available now on Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome.
Sure.
At long last.
It made $5 million in Canada, the United Kingdom, and the US on a budget of $15 million. So.
Ugh.
But yeah,
good movie though.
So then he kind of, comes off of Talented Mr. Ripley. Everyone's like, holy shit, old Dickie here has got something. And they start putting him into movies. So he starts working with Steven Spielberg, starts working with Sam Mendes, starts working with Scorsese, big rise there for Jude Law there. Just mention quickly, this is the director's follow-up after the critically and award-winning picture, English Patience. And then my last note is for his cameo in Deadpool 2. Did you know Matt Damon was in Deadpool 2?
I know Brad Pitt is in Deadpool 2.
So there's a scene where Cable shows up to the present and he's like, there's like two truckers, like farmer or Hicks. There's two Hicks on a truck. I want to say it's Matt Damon in like a fat suit. And then Alan Tudyk, I think, is the other guy.
I don't remember this. I've only seen that movie once in the theater, though.
So for his cameo in Deadpool 2, a disguised Matt Damon was credited under the Dickie Greenleaf name. So
that's cool.
That's pretty good. All right. I can't ask you this since you have technically seen it. You didn't miss this movie. You saw this movie. The question is, did I miss the movie? Hard yes. This was an excellent movie. Could have been a little bit shorter, maybe tighten it up a little bit, maybe. But I'm one to look for movies that are 90 minutes. I miss the 90-minute days. I will complain about long movies, and at the very end, it kind of felt a little long, but not enough to where I'm like, oh, this is ruining it at all.
And the stuff that's happening isn't bad. It's just like it feels like it doesn't need to still be going.
Right.
Like
it felt like we hit the end. So what are we still doing?
That ending with him killing the guy on the boat and Kate Blanchett is there as well. And it's like, well, how are you going to get out of this? Because you're trapped in the middle of the ocean on a boat with a bunch of other people. honestly, what that feels like is them setting up a sequel.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and since there is no sequel, like that whole last scene, like we kind of talked about, just feels like it doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, agree with that. I agree with that. All right, that's going to do it for Movies I Missed 1999. That's our final feature for the season. But that's not all. Come back next week. We're going to wrap up the year of 1999. We'll talk about some other stuff that we might have missed. Some of the things that we didn't miss, we can mention then, and might give away some awards. So come back for our final episode of the season next week as we wrap up this season. Ryan, it's been a pleasure.
Ditto.
All right, this has been Movies I Missed 1999. Talented Mr. Ripley. I'm Jesse Munoz.
Ryan Miller.
See you next week for the wrap up.